Hi, everybody. It's Joe Chaffee on this Monday evening, 6 o'clock Eastern Time. And yes, it's dark. We are in Standard Time now, which, as I've been saying, I'm loving it because of the fact that we get to get the weather models an hour earlier than we otherwise would, which will be a big advantage come the winter time, especially when doing these live streams. We have the entire 18Z run of the GFS out and done. And it's leading us down some rather interesting paths. Whether we believe it or not is another matter, and we'll get to that in a second. Also, for my Patreon members and my Patreon patriots, as we have been calling them, that are on tonight, we had some trouble with this morning's live stream. There were some internet connection issues with my wireless, or perhaps just the connection to my house. I don't know. But Optimum is working on it. And hopefully, when I test it out, when I get home tonight, it will be okay. So you might be my guinea pigs tonight, those of you on the Patreon network and my Patreon platform. And if you're interested in joining, it's just $2 a month. I'll put the link here on the chat board for you. And it's a good place to be, I think, if you are if weather is your thing, this will be a good place because you'll not only get posts pretty much all day long, but you'll also get exclusive live streams that we do just for Patreon members. And there's going to be much more as we move along. So just consider it. The link is there for you. And thank you for those of you who have been on it. If you have questions, ask some of the folks on the board tonight because they know what's been going on with that. Now, we've got some busy weather going on tonight. 2 lows in play. And the second one, the one that's out to the west, is the one that is more problematic. And we're showing you here on the Storm Prediction Center's map. We actually do have a tornado watch that is up for the northern half of Louisiana and extends into parts of Mississippi. All of this encased inside an area of slight to enhanced risk of severe weather, which the Storm Prediction Center had shown for yesterday. And that area, the marginal risk, runs up into southern West Virginia. We are also going to see a risk of severe weather on Tuesday as that weather system moves on to the east, and that area is going to shift eastward. The severe weather risk area is. I'm just buying a little time here so I can bring that map up for you, so hang on one second. And indeed, no adjustments, actually some slight adjustments have been made to this today. I just noticed it. I'm going to jump over to the Storm Prediction Center's map for tomorrow, and here it is right here. They've actually kind of nudged the slight risk up a little bit further north into New Jersey, touching southeastern Pennsylvania. Looks like they might have shifted it a little bit to the east, but it covers a good chunk of eastern Virginia, the Delmarva Peninsula, down into North Carolina, and a small sliver into South Carolina, the slight risk. But you can see there's a large area of marginal risk running from southern Mississippi northeastward, almost into southern New England, reaches about New York City, Long Island, and extreme southeastern New York State, into eastern Pennsylvania, except the northeastern corner, where you get the northern edge of the marginal risk. Now, I would just say this. This time of year, it's tough to get severe storms to hold together up the further north you go. I think that's a pretty obvious statement to make. But the one thing that might be different from this past Friday, when we had the severe weather risk indicated up the East Coast, that area really was during the overnight, Friday night, and that made the possibility of storms becoming severe even less as the night wore on. I happened to notice that there was a tornado warning that was up for parts of southeastern PA. They basically put it up and took it down. So that might have been the only incidence of severe weather that I saw for Friday night. It wound up being more rain than anything else. But this is going to come during the mid and late afternoon tomorrow. So if we can maximize the daytime heating, I think there's a risk that we could see a couple of these cells reach strong and possibly even severe levels. So why don't we take a look now at the radar this evening, because we've got this area of light rain that is still pestering parts of New Jersey into southern New England and southeastern New England. The rain has not been all that heavy with this, but it's moving away to the northeast. And then we've got this break, and then you can see the weather that's out to the west, and that is from the second low that is coming in tonight, and this will be along the East Coast on Tuesday, producing some heavy downpours and some embedded thunderstorms that are beginning to pop up here and there. Just want to check the local radars, and of course this is always a good time to remind everybody it's 5 minutes after 6 o'clock Eastern time, so obviously the radars are dated. If you are watching this later on tonight on a replay, then bear that in mind. You need to go to weather.gov to check your latest radars and for the latest watches and warnings. Not too much happening from a warning standpoint as we take a look at Fort Campbell, Kentucky's radar. At the moment, we'll drop south westward toward Memphis. We're seeing a couple of lines of downpours and perhaps some developing thunderstorms, but nothing here has reached peak intensity yet. They probably will a couple of hours from now and a little bit beyond that. But for now, they were just still in kind of the firing up stages. And again, make sure you go to weather.gov if you're watching this on a replay later on this evening or during the overnight period. Now, where are we going as we move forward? I'm going to start with the 12Z GFS run tonight, because the 18Z is a little bit different and then becomes radically different as we go into next week. And I want to address that that issue because, frankly, I don't know if I have a whole lot of confidence in what it's doing. But let's get to it first. First off, this is the GFS and the European model today kind of lined up pretty closely. And here we have our cold front that's coming through for Tuesday. We get into our showers and storms. They extend down along the East Coast. This is tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock. And then that goes by, and we're going to dry out for Wednesday and Thursday. However, you're noticing here already by Wednesday that you're starting to see some rain breaking out across the Gulf states. The cold front that comes through the east is going to stall out over the Gulf states, and this is going to start to set the table up for the end of the week. Also, we're seeing a little bit of the white stuff there up in northern Kansas and getting into northern Missouri and on up into the Chicago area on Thursday night into Friday morning. This as low pressure begins to come out of the Gulf states and run up the East Coast. The GFS didn't really didn't go too crazy with this, but notice to the west of that, you've got a fairly impressive shot of cold air that drops down into the northern plains and into the western lakes. That coldest air is going to drop more southward than it is going to move eastward. In the meantime, for Friday and Friday night, we've got raw and wet conditions in the northeast, and this high that's up in New Brunswick and on up into southeastern Canada and Quebec, wedging down a bit. So we are seeing a little bit of snow that the model generates in upstate New York and eventually up into perhaps northernmost New England, northern Maine. The low moves off the East Coast on Saturday morning. It's just east of Boston, wrapped up a bit, moving to the northeast and intensifying, bringing rains up into Nova Scotia and on up into areas to the north of there, up into southern New Brunswick, and snow north and west, and also some snow into western New England and in upstate New York. Probably going to see a little bit of lake effect machine going on with this. But again, look at the dash blue lines, those thickless lines that represent the cold air. The lower the values here when you go to 516, 510. So that basically is the colder air is with the lower number. And that focuses its attention on the western lakes and down into the western parts of the Ohio Valley. The push to the east is not all that impressive. And in fact, by the time we get to Saturday, The coldest of that air is pretty much modified already. We have to wait for a second front that comes through here along about Monday of next week, late Monday. And from this GFS run, there wasn't too much with it. There's going to be some kind of a low that will develop off the East Coast. The European has it as well, although the European has it much further to the left and would argue for the possibility of a precip event, mostly rain in the coast and maybe some snow inland, well inland, north and west, upstate New York and interior New England for Monday night, Tuesday. And then you get this really impressive cold shot if this holds. We're talking about temperatures down in the 20s here Wednesday morning and probably not much above the low and mid 40s for Wednesday afternoon if this is right. I mean, this is a really impressive shot of cold air because of the deep trough that's going to be in the eastern part of the U.S. Then, of course, that cold air mass pulls out, and then the next cold front comes on Friday with a shot of colder air, but not as cold as the one before that. And then after that, who knows, because we're certainly out at day 10. And, of course, we know that there's variability here. And, by the way, when we look at the temperatures, and I'm going to go close up here in the east. I know I've got some Florida folks watching, okay? So let me just back this up. And you can see the extent of the cold air. We'll back it up and move it forward here. Going into, this week, of course, and into the weekend. Here we are for Saturday. So there's your cold air for Saturday morning. And you can see that back through the northern plains, you've got temperatures down in the teens and 20s into the Ohio Valley. This is for Saturday morning. But in the east, we really don't get into that very cold air. It does get cold here by Sunday morning to some degree, but it's not unusually cold. Areas north and west, upstate New York, up into New England, you've got teens and 20s, low to mid 30s everywhere else. It's a fair shot of cold air. But again, we got to wait for that second push that comes in for Tuesday and Wednesday. And this is Tuesday afternoon with temperatures barely into the 40s. This is 1 o'clock in the afternoon. GFS forecasting 40 for Newark and 43 for Atlantic City. Temperatures in the 40s down into Virginia and North Carolina. And then here's Wednesday morning with 20s and even teens going all the way down into the western Carolinas, 20s all the way down into southern Georgia and down to the Gulf Coast. This is a deep trough that's going to be in the east. And the daytime highs, well, they don't go anywhere. Temperatures, if you want to believe this, it barely gets to the upper 30s and low 40s here. That's how cold this air mass is. And another cold night Wednesday night into Thursday, and then we'll start to moderate after that. The Europeans on the same page with this. We don't have too much of a difference, but the difference does begin to show up on the 18Z run, which we'll get to in 1 second. But here's how I want you to look at how the upper air looks with all this, and it's just loading up here. So just give it a moment here. So we've got this trough there. It comes for Saturday. That swings on through, and now here's the one for the middle part of next week. That is a very deep trough that is along the East Coast. It's just along or just east of 80 degrees west. So any storm development with this would be well offshore. And this cold shot goes all the way down into Florida. You can see how far south the jet stream gets down into the state of Florida with that trough. And it takes a while, but eventually it does lift out, only to have another one come in behind it. Okay, so let's look at the differences now. I'm going to switch over. This is Tuesday night of next week. And this is now the new GFS model run. Okay, totally different. And I haven't had a whole lot of time to analyze why it's doing this. But I'm sure there are other changes across North America that's causing this trough on this model run to drop much, much, much further south and west. In fact, it wraps this all up and cuts it off as it turns it to the east. This would imply some kind of storm development in the eastern part of the United States that would be a rainstorm for the coast and maybe a snowfall of some significance relative to the time of year for parts of the Ohio Valley, the eastern parts of the Ohio Valley, western PA, and upstate New York. I'm not forecasting this. I'm just illustrating what's going on here with regards to the new GFS run. And I frankly do not know. I really don't believe it at this point because it's just so radically different from the last several runs of the models. If the European were showing this, perhaps going in this direction, it might raise my eyebrows a little bit more. But I want to show you the outcome of all this when we run through the 18Z on the surface. So we're at Wednesday of this week, so we know that's dry. Here's Friday night into Saturday, which is a little bit more robust on this run, by the way, as that low moves northeastward. But also, it kind of looks like what we're going through right now for today and tonight and into Tuesday, where you've got a primary low. This one is a little bit further east than the system for today, running into eastern Ohio, western PA. The secondary low redevelops off the Virginia coast. You can see the high up to the north. Translate this setup a month from now, and we would probably be dealing with an accumulating snow changing to rain situation for the coast and a longer period of snow possibly changing to rain inland. If this were December 5th instead of November 5th, and if it were January 5th, it might be even something more important than that. But that low runs out to the northeast. We get the rain. Upstate New York, New England gets some lake effect snows on the backside. Now, going into next week, you don't see that big drop in the east because of where the trough is. With the trough dropping well to the west and south, the GFS suddenly starts to develop this low off the North Carolina coast, and you've got this high that's this very cold high that's kind of enveloping around it, and the result is you wind up with a deepening low moving up the Appalachians, and where it is cold in the Ohio Valley, in West Virginia, western Pennsylvania, through upstate New York, they get a pretty significant snowfall out of this, and then on the backside we get a pretty significant lake effect out of this. But it's not, this model run is so different that it is not nearly as cold as what the prior run showed. It is cold, but it's cold in a different way because of where the high parks itself from Minnesota, with one high center there and another high center in eastern Canada. It's a very interesting surface if we were in the depths of winter, but we aren't. One thing you might get out of this, by the way, is that if we hold this type of general pattern going through the winter months, it's going to be a busy winter snow-wise in the eastern part of the United States if that's the case. And we don't know that that's the case. What I just said is just pretty much a statement of the obvious, really, with respect to the overall pattern. But why don't we take a look at what's going on in the upper air? Because obviously there are things that are different from the prior run, and we can take a look at day 9 here, which is next Wednesday, and go back. I'm going to go back 2 model runs. Now look at this trough. This is from the 6Z run overnight. I can even we'll go one better. Let's go to last night. Okay, so the trough axis is off the East Coast by Wednesday afternoon as of last night. Then as we go to the next run after that, you'll see that the trough axis in the east is further west. Then at 12Z, the 12Z run, it's even deeper right along the East Coast. Ridge out in the Atlantic at 40. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. That's holding the trough in the eastern part of the United States. You've got a trough into the Pacific Northwest, so that kind of cuts the Pacific North America index down a bit, if that's the case. And now we'll go to the new run. So when we go to the new run, that trough just gets, basically, the bottom part of that trough just digs down into the southeastern part of the U.S., as opposed to what we had from earlier today. Deep trough in the east moving out, a wrapped up upper system. In fact, let me just back it a bit up to 12 hours earlier when the trough axis is to our west. Okay, so this is actually Tuesday evening on the old run. And this is the GFS on the new run. I have my doubts here And I'm seeing already, there's one important difference, and that's out in the Atlantic with this upper high along 40 West. The new GFS run is breaking that down, and that might not be correct. It seems to be doing something here with this upper low that's between the Azores and Greenland, and that's kind of flattening out this upper high that's out in the Atlantic. If that is wrong, then the action that's going on to the west is going to be wrong as well. The European today, again, not that different from the GFS from earlier, okay? With this deep trough moving into the eastern part of the United States. The only difference that I picked up on the fact was that the trough axis on the European is further west than the GFS, which opens the door for a coastal system to move up the coast. But see the difference here on the new GFS on the upper air? The trough axis is stretched out northeast, southwest. It's digging it down west of the Mississippi and then going to try to swing it around. But the top part of that's going to get separated, and you're going to left with a rather dynamic bottom half. I really don't know. That's a huge difference from earlier today. And I really, again, have my doubts as to whether that is real or not. I would like to see a bunch of runs do this, and I would like to see all the other models kind of line up in this direction. If we're going to focus our weather attention in a different place. The European surface map, by the way, with what it's doing here. So let me just back away. We're going to have to just kind of use our imaginations here, but you've got colder air coming in. Here comes the high for Tuesday. I'm sorry, hold on. European, please. Sorry about that. So here we have we have a surface low that forms out offshore on Monday, and that goes out. Big high comes down, low east of Cape Cod, and then a big high that builds on in. The overnight run was making the argument that that low that you see well east of the Virginia coast was going to be more tucked in closer to the Jersey coast. So, look, the recent GFS run is so radical that, again, I don't really have a whole lot of faith in it at this point. Just for laughs, why don't we take a look at what it generates for snow? And of course, if you're going to wind up with a low moving up the Appalachians, you're going to produce some heavy wet snow amounts in eastern Ohio, western PA, and western New York. If you're looking at this, again, if you're looking at this thinking that this is something to really hang your hat on, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Not at day 9 of the long range. It's not happening. The 12Z, look at the difference. Just go back one run and look at the difference. And it's not even close, okay? The snows that you see up in upstate New York and up into central and northern New England, to me, make much more sense because of what's happening. Unless we're going to see a radical change in this going forward. So, look, this is the first system that we're looking at, and from the standpoint of forecasting, this is very much, we're in learning mode here. We're trying to figure out, we're trying to get a sense of where the pattern is going to be going over the next couple of months. So this, at least, this could be the first system that's going to be of some importance in the eastern part of the United States, or not. And it's very important for us to pay attention on how the model handles all of this, because it might be something that's going to come up again and again, and we may have to revert back to the outcomes here in order to try to gain a leg up as far as the overall forecast is concerned. The rain, by the way, because of course rain is an issue, and I'm going to just get out of this and just take us through Saturday anyway. So for the rest of the week, through the eastern part of the U.S., you've got some, areas getting 2 or 3 inches on the GFS model anyway, and others getting much less than that. Looks like a little bit more for the Northeast. A lot of this is going to come on Friday. What's going through now is not a large chunk of this, so I think much of this is going to be showing itself for Friday into Friday night before weather conditions start to improve over the weekend. So definitely a very interesting pattern overall. And as always with these things, going to be a lot of fun to watch, and more importantly, a lot of fun to learn when we have these weather systems and the challenge that we're going to have going forward. By the way, here's the U.S. satellite loop tonight, so you can see this first area in the Northeast kind of moving out. There's your sunset occurring, that dark arm that swings across. And then, of course, we've got this Great Lakes low. And by the way, this was supposed to be, if you remember, the models had a wrapped up 980 gale center moving up into the northern lakes. Not happening. That was something that the models did a number of times, as I recall, last winter. And none of them happened. So let's remember that. Maybe we're seeing a continuation of that. Maybe there's some kind of built-in model error now that favors the, has these in the long range where you have these deep lows that the model produces in the Great Lakes, only to have those lows taken away when we get into the shorter term, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes as we go forward here. You always got to have your eyes open when it comes to these weather models and to the forecast going forward. So we are going now to the chat board, and I see a number of you on here. Charles Baker, nice to see you. Master Chief. What about the so of course we're going to jump to the parallel, aren't we? Master Chief wants to know about the FV3 GFS, and that is the, I believe that is what is known as the parallel GFS. Well, why don't we look? Okay, look. I'm going to tell you right now. I can't look at all these models; it'll drive you insane. And you know what? From a forecasting standpoint, for you youngins out there that are watching, you don't want to get into the habit of second guessing yourself by looking at every single model that's out there, because you'll never make a forecast then. Okay, and that's not what you want to do. All right, you want to be able to make a forecast with a certain degree of confidence. If you find yourself looking at this stuff on every single run, you're going to drive yourself crazy. So, here's the parallel GFS, which only go out to the middle of next week. So let me just back it up. So here's tonight, here's tomorrow, so we know that's correct. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday now. Here comes the low for Friday. Same idea, low into eastern Ohio. Holds on to a primary west of the Appalachians, a little bit further west of the Appalachians than the standard GFS, but it got that secondary low. It does bring some decent rain here Friday evening, if you want to believe it. And then the lows go up into New England, turns colder, and the parallel anyway just kind of overwhelms the cold air. This is the new 18Z parallel GFS run, which is pretty much like the 12Z. So the 18Z GFS doesn't have a supporter here in this model. By the way, why don't we take a look at the NAM? Because I want to take a look at the snow that it breaks out here. First off, here's the NAM's view for tomorrow. Models aren't overly impressive with the severe weather threat for tomorrow, but you know something? I just be really careful with that because of the fact that it's had a habit here in the eastern states of not behaving itself and not handling these cold fronts too well. But nonetheless, that front goes through, and now you have the next system setting up for the end of the week. And this is only through early Friday morning. It doesn't go out any further than that, but it does have a fair amount of snow breaking out through the northern half of Missouri, just north of St. Louis, into western Illinois, and snow in parts of Iowa, southeastern Minnesota, and into western Wisconsin. The snowfall is just starting to get generated here, 1 to 3 inches in northern Missouri, I want to look at the rainfall, the precip amount. So, starting to spit out a few tenths of liquid here. So we're early in the game with the NAM. So I want to pay attention to the NAM because the NAM is my, for me, the NAM has always been my kind of go-to model in the short range in the wintertime. I just think it works really well, and I understand how it works. So even if, I can look at it and what it's literally putting out and then use it to figure out what I think is going to happen, which may wind up being different than what the NAM actually shows. But it's a model that I understand. It's a model that I'm really comfortable with. And that, at the end of the day, is the bottom line. You got to find, for forecasters, have to find the models that they're comfortable with, and they use them. And some tools, you work in your garage. The guys who like to carpentry and such. You have your favorite saw, you have your favorite hammer, screwdriver, etc., pliers. Same concept, okay? I've got my favorite models that I look to for guidance to make my forecast, and that's what models are supposed to be for, by the way, for guidance. And Scott Briller pointing out that's a great stat, Scott. Thanks for bringing that up. New York City Central Park since 1960 has only had 6 Novembers where there's been more than an inch of snow. That's pretty rare, okay? So since 1960, you're talking about 60 years, almost 60 years of data, okay? 58 years. And you've only had 6 of those Novembers where you've put down more than an inch of snow. So you're talking about an event that happens once every 9 or 10 years or so. It's got to be a perfect setup. Okay, Israel, I will do that. I will be showing, and this is a site that you can go to. It's a free site. It's weather.us, and I will be using this from time to time, and I've gotten permission to use it too, which is good. Because I don't really like to use stuff without certainly crediting the person or the website. But I will put the link up here for you. And for those of you who want to look at some pretty good weather charts here, they're very good, in fact, because we've got so many more options. This is from, hang on here. Just a second. Something's gotten stuck on me. Here's a little video ad that came up. Okay, hang on. All right, you guys can see me here, right? So hang on one second. All right, so weather.us and okay, so if we set the parameters up, let me make sure you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. Let me get rid of that. And we actually can look at snowfall maps here. You've got so many different options. I should have preloaded this. So here's accumulated snowfall. This is off today's European model. And we can go out to, I'm going to show you the entire 10-day period. We'll let the map load, and we'll go into the Northeast. And can I open this? Let's see if I can. I'm going to just try something here. Hang on one second. See if this works. It may or may not work, and it's not working. Okay. So, all right. So, if you want, you can take a look at this. This is the Europeans snowfall forecast from today's 12Z run, and you'll notice where all the snows are through central and northern Missouri, northern Kansas, and then on up into the upper Midwest, particularly up near the Great Lakes where we've got some lake effect, and we've got some lake effect going on for parts of northwest PA, western New York, and also some snows up in northern Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. So this is what the European came up with, The European being very similar to the GFS model run that we saw earlier today, but now, of course, we've got the late afternoon run, which is totally different. So I'll put the link up for you guys in just a moment. Give me 1 second here. And you can, of course, this is a free site, weather.us. I don't know, Israel, as far as the seasonal stuff is concerned with the seasonal maps of the European, you're going to need to subscribe to either Weather Bell or any of the others. I don't know what the other sites are, but you probably would have to subscribe at least to Weather Bell to do that. So you'd have to look there. They're not available for free. If you're on Facebook, you can join some of the weather groups. They sometimes post those maps up, but that's really the only way that you can see them because they're not for public display. I wonder how Weather US is able to. I don't know, Ethan Bean. I'm not sure. All I know is I asked Dr. Mao for permission back many months ago for last year. I did use the maps from time to time, and and he was very kind to let me do that. And of course, go take a look at his site and pull it up. Weather.us. The link is up there. Okay, I don't know what your David R. The awesome adjective. So you're putting up the definition here. NAM did do well last year, 99 Wolves. That is correct. It had the hot hand last winter for quite a while, and certainly through the Four Easters. 60 to 1961, Pete Zahut in New York City. The 1960-61 winter was one of the snowier winters was one of the snowiest winters on record. I'm trying to remember if that was it was the snowiest winter on record prior to the 95-96 winter. I got to go back and look at my stats again, but it's up there in the top 5 for sure. And they had snow November, December, January, February. It was every single month through that whole stretch. And that was quite a January. In fact, in January of 61, January 23rd, I believe, 22nd or 23rd of 1961, in Brookhaven out near me, set their all-time record low of 23 degrees below zero. Now, that was with a really deep snow cover and a ton of radiational cooling that happened on that night. And I've always said that that's the one record now that I have not seen broken where I live. And I would like to see that at least challenged. I've seen it get down to 15 to 20 below in some of the Pine Barrens. So I just would like to see how it occurs and compare it to how cold I would get at my house. Andrew Del Virginia, is it possible the low next week looks further east and gives New Jersey some snow? I'm not really looking at the moment, Andrew, in those terms, because I really have a lot of doubts as to what the model run did today. So until I get a sense of what what the current GFS did, whether it's just out to lunch or not, it's kind of pointless to go into that sort of speculation, at least at this point. Charlie Baker, since you came home suntanned and beauteous, okay, that's a nice word. I've been called many things beauteous. Would like to nominate me as the November weather poster boy for the gang. Thank you so much, Charles Baker. By the way, Charlie, you're on. I know you're one of the Patriots, but double check to make sure. Okay, just letting you know. Scott Briller. Hey, Anthony's not on tonight, so he's jumping with the stats here. 55 inches in Central Park. Be curious as to what Newark got out of that. Okay, Billy Bob says Weather US has the seasonal maps. Just click on the forecast tab. Okay, hang on a second. Let's see. I'm going to probably have to do this off screen when I got some time to go through and see everything that's on here, because he's got a ton of stuff. All right, I'm having a bit of a tough time trying to find it now. Forecast tab. All right. You know what? It's just going to take me a bit, Billy. Thanks for the heads up, though. So you know what? When I'm done with this, I will. I will take a look at it tonight and tomorrow morning and see if I can figure it out. PlayStation boss, can we confirm the lake effect snow event next week to at least be happening, but uncertainty with accumulations and timing? Okay, I think there will be some lake effect stuff going on next week with that trough swinging eastward. The timing, there'll be some of it on Saturday because of this first low pulling out and colder air coming in on the backside Saturday into Sunday, and then maybe again Tuesday into Tuesday night, early Wednesday. At least from what I'm seeing right now. But of course, stay tuned because all of this is subject to change, obviously. Ethan Bean says, you're the one that discovered it. Okay. All right. Everybody gets credit. I don't want to not credit everyone. So let's credit Ethan Bean. Click on forecast under the weather US symbol at the top left corner and click on ECMWF seasonal forecast to get the Euro seasonal forecast. All right, there you go. All right, you know what? When I got a little more time, I'm going to do exactly that. Okay, and thanks for the heads up. Really appreciate it. It's always good if any of you, if you've got stuff like this and you want to share it with everybody. It's great. Michael Azera, any chance that a derecho might form with tomorrow's severe weather threat for central New Jersey? Oh God, you're asking for an awful lot this time of year. I did not give it a really. I gotta give it a much closer look. So I don't want to give you. I would instinctively my mind is telling me to go against it. I didn't even get a chance to read SPC's discussion to see if they brought that up. But if we did get one, my Lord, it would be highly unusual to see it at this time of year. Tug Hill, by God, yes, brings out moisture. With any kind of lift up in northern New York. Oh, absolutely. I've got some buddies up there that fish. I've gone fishing up in that part of New York State a number of times. I haven't gone up during the wintertime, but one of these years I'm going to make it a point to go up there during a lake effect event because I really want to see what's going on. Any chance we could get a few flurries early? Hey, if we get into that really cold air, Stephen Franco, yeah, might be, depending on the upper trough, who knows? Maybe we could be setting up for a couple of snowflakes to fly around. That certainly would not be unusual for the early to middle part of November. What temp you think you'd get in my area if I got to minus 20 in Brookhaven? I've seen minus 8 or 9 while I've been out here, so I wouldn't be surprised to get down to minus 15, maybe. I'm only about 15 miles west of Brookhaven, a little more than 15 miles west of Brookhaven, and I'm wide open where I am, so it wouldn't be a shock to me. All right, folks, I got to wrap it up at this point. Thanks so much for being here tonight. Just one more time here. Let me just bring this up. For those of you who would like to become one of the Patreon Patriots, as we've been called by a few people, this gives you access to all my weather posts from my website with no ads. You get additional posts on what's going on that don't go on the website. One-on-one with me, exclusive videos that we're trying to do at least once on a daily basis. So you can consider that. It's just $2 a month for a subscription. And if you need more hand-holding, there are some higher tiers with regard to mainly if you need it for some decisions that you have to make on a regular basis. You might want to consider one of the higher tiers. And also, you can support my channel very easily. That doesn't cost you a dime if you shop on Amazon. And that is really a great, easy way because we're a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and their affiliated sites. So you do your shopping. If you do your Christmas shopping on Amazon, then Amazon will throw me back a little bit of coin, not out of your pocket, but out of theirs, and I get a couple of cigars for my Christmas stocking. So thank you so much for those of you who have done that and for those of you who might consider doing that in the future. Scheduled tonight, the Joe and Joe Weather Show will be back, and that'll be at 9:15 Eastern Time. So be sure to tune in for that. We'll probably have a lot to talk about. And we'll have the new NAM coming out while we're on the air, too, so we can live stream that for the first time since last winter. And tomorrow, we'll have a Patreon live stream, internet signal permitting, tomorrow morning at roughly 9:30. We'll also have the new NAM coming out at that time. And our next YouTube live stream, of course, tomorrow night, tomorrow's being election day, so I'm going to plan for doing it at 6 o'clock Eastern Time, but I may have less to do tomorrow than I usually do. So unless severe weather is getting in the way, I might move the live stream around a bit later. We'll see. But right now, think about 6 o'clock Eastern Time, and I will be putting it up. I will schedule it earlier in the day so that you'll know for sure, and you can plan accordingly, because you can't miss a Joe Chaffee weather live stream. Okay, have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and we will maybe see you later on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. If not, we'll see you tomorrow.